Hi, good evening, and welcome to my daily live session on various tools and methods from my toolkit for execution excellence. My name is Dinakar, and I'm the founder of Samuthana and inventor of DoHow, a methodology for changing the mindset and culture in organizations and teams. With that very brief introduction, let me now jump into the topic which I spoke yesterday, which was about the Z model, Z for zero effect and zero defect. I spoke about this model, which was some kind of excellence model introduced in India. I would use the word was because right now it is not that active, not that popular, though the intention was very, very strong. This was done along with our Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi's, what should I say, initiative of Make in India. This also got launched to make sure that Indian companies becomes zero defect and zero effect companies, wherein they're generating zero defects inside the factory and zero effects on the environment. That was some kind of a initiative to ensure that the Indian companies become world class and are in a position to compete on a global the global market by improving their internal performance and as well as achieving excellence in whatever that they're doing. Unfortunately, this really didn't take off in a big way, and yesterday I explained the reasons why it couldn't take off in a big way. However, it's all about ensuring that continuously whatever that you're doing is being improved, and there is a sense of organizational learning happening, and also the world class standards are achieved in manufacturing. And that was about the Z model. And today I'm going to be talking about something totally different, which is a quality tool, which is called a stratification. So that is my topic for the day. I leave it as it is because there is nothing much to see in that slide. It's just two graphs and a line in between, and the text stratification, which can be easily read. What is stratification all about? When you're doing problem solving, any problem can occur because of multiple sources, especially in production, in manufacturing. The sources for a particular problem. Let's say there is a defect occurring, and this defect could be occurring from multiple machines because of multiple vendors, multiple assembly lines, or maybe multiple set of components which are used, a combination of components. There could be multiple reasons why a particular defect occurred. And stratification is a tool or is a methodology wherein one would try to understand the effect arising from each source. What is the contribution of each source for a particular problem? Let us say that there are two different machines grinding a particular component, and then there are rejections because of grinding marks in the visual inspection. Using the stratification, it is possible to identify from which machine this particular component is being produced. So I think you got the hang of it. If suppose such a thing had to be done, there has to be a traceability at the end of the line, wherever the inspection is being done, wherever the defects are being generated, to trace back to the source, which means there is a tremendous amount of transparency required in the system. And that transparency is the biggest challenge. Therefore, stratification, though it seems very simple and commonsensical, is extremely difficult, especially in mass production, where you're talking about manufacturing thousands or even millions of components every day. And in such a situation where millions of components are being produced from maybe a couple of lines or maybe tens of lines, maybe tens of machines, then it becomes extremely complex because you've got everything mixed up. And how do you ensure this traceability? So that's the place where I'm going to pitch in directly to talk about how this traceability is something extremely important for quick problem solving, which is the essence of execution excellence. Whenever there is a problem, if we can solve the problem very quickly, understand from that, learn from that, and move on, then it really gives us a different platform altogether. So the conventional ways of doing it was either writing a chit and then allowing the components to move along with the chit, which could be called as a lot card, or maybe you can call it as an identification slip, which was what was used traditionally. And these identification slips helped in a big way in trying to come to the final inspection with the source already defined. And then later, when some what should I call it as heat treatment or surface treatment processes were involved, identification slips never used to work because you can't really write down something and then put it into a furnace for heat treatment and the entire thing gets burnt, because there you're talking about temperatures beyond 1000 degrees, so it won't really work by writing in a piece of paper. Similarly, if you're trying to talk about some surface treatment activity, maybe it could be plating or whatever. In that case, the entire component would be dipped into a chemical bath. And again, there again, depending on the chemical composition, either the entire writing would get dissolved, or it could even get totally what should I say, call it as disintegrated, because of the bath which you're using. If it's a very highly acidic bath, then the entire thing would just get burnt. It doesn't. You can't see the paper after that at all. Therefore, the next idea was to go in for some kind of tokens, where you really put a token on the tray or the material handling equipment, where you could really trace back to the original machine, which is still popular in many cases. But then the tokens also would have some limitation, because there is a good amount of manual error involved in that. Why is the manual error involved in that? Let us say I put a wrong token there, which means that my stratification will not really be that effective. So then came the modern, little more advanced systems, wherein you have barcode systems, where at each stage the material is, the component is read using a barcode, and then you have a RF. Maybe then came the RFID, where you have RFID chips integrated to the component or to the tray, and then you could read through and find out what is the entire history of that particular component or product, which was manufactured in which machine, what is the actual value, etc. Then the even more advanced one were the dot matrix codes or the QR codes. I think you must have heard of that. QR code is quite popular. Dot matrix code is a similar one, but maybe a little more data in that particular code, but basically a QR code. QR codes you have seen now in newspapers, in magazines, and wherever. Even in visiting cards, people have QR codes to really communicate some information using. It's nothing other than a dot matrix is the generic word. QR and a different protocol there is what I understand. QR is a different protocol, but then basically they are having dark and light patches, dots, pixels, and through those pixels you can identify which you can store whatever data you need, and that would be the next level. Now, the ultimate, which I can think of, which I have seen in my professional life, is where you put a QR code on a component directly. You engrave a QR code on a component. It could be either using a laser setup, or maybe you have a printer. If there is no heat treatment or anything like that involved, you could even print it onto the component, a QR code or a dot matrix code, and then that can get read at the time where you are inspecting, so that at each stage of the component operation, you know the entire history of that particular component or operation. This in the modern world could be called as a very, very advanced MES, where there is no IoT really used here. IoT could be the next level for certification, wherein you are capturing data and directly it is getting stored into a server or wherever it is, and then that gets transferred onto the component. If you do that, if that can be done, that is ultimate. If suppose that can be achieved, then problem solving becomes extremely easy, because in all the assignments that I have done so far, both as an executive and as a consultant, the biggest gold mine is in understanding data, is in understanding the variations. I think sometime back I spoke about SPC. SPC is about making sure that there are only normal variations in a process. Normal variations are what they are called as variations being contributed only because of chance causes. Chance causes are something which always is there in nature. And if only those variations are working in a system, then normally the system is stable. The moment there is an external influence, then the system becomes unstable, and that's the reason for a defect getting generated. Therefore, it is important to have a system stability, and to achieve system stability, the best way is to make sure that everything is monitored. And today, with the speed of computers, with such high processing speeds, the time is really not a problem. Earlier days, it used to be a problem if you have a machine with a cycle time of, let's say, 1.5, 1.4 seconds, like in the case of a multi-spindle automat. To really be measuring, storing data, and again getting the computer ready for the next data to be captured was quite challenging. I remember one of the first SPC stations where we put the computers. I had gone to Bamberg at that time. That was in 1992 or 93. It was 93, where they had SPC stations with automatic data capturing. And those days, the challenges were very, very interesting, which possibly today don't even exist, as to how is your data varying. When you fix an analog signal to a computer, then the analog signal is constantly varying. So when you get the signal into the measuring device and into the capturing device, the signal is constantly oscillating. Therefore, you need to understand for what duration do you pick up the signal, so that the variation, the oscillation is less, and how much amount of amplitude are going to allow. so that the right signal is picked up. These things are all today solved. There's nothing which is really complex. All this is done through software, and therefore having a kind of a traceability is the biggest gold mine that any company can think of, which is something which is most of the time forgotten. I'm not talking about let us say reducing the defect from 60 from 20% to 10%. That kind of a reduction is something which is not that difficult, because most of the things are extremely visible, extremely easy to trace, easy to identify. When it comes to reducing the defects from points of percentages to zero defect, to come to that level of zero defect, all these are extremely required, wherein you have data being captured online, and this online data is then being interpreted for what the causes are, what the effect is, and accordingly the next activity would be to actuate those respective machines or assembly lines or transfer lines to correct their values to get the final result which is intended for the final product. uh, in the conventional manufacturing setup, always there will be a time delay of about 4 to 5 hours by the time you get a feedback. Imagine a situation where you can get the feedback instantaneously, and then instantaneous feedback can also give an instantaneous actuator. In control system, there are basically two fundamental, what should I say, sources, and I don't know whether you can call it a source or not. One is an actuator, the other one is a sensor. Sensor is something which is sensing the device. Actuator is the one which is actuating and changing the position or changing the setting based on an intelligence. And that's the intelligence which is the algorithm which is part of the control system. So control system has an algorithm, a sensor, and a actuator. Now, in this case, when you want to stratify any data, then it's important to be at least having sensors in the entire assembly line, wherein you could pick up the data, capture the data, because always everywhere today, with the CNC being almost rampant across industry, I don't think of any industry where you don't have a CNC machine. So data is available in some form or the other. In a CNC machine, maybe you don't have data in terms of the actual measurement, but you would have the data in terms of the actual movement that the slide did. That measurement is available. So based on the actual movement that the slide did, and over time using a correction factor for the machine spring constant. Machine spring constant is something which is very interesting. When you're trying to cut any material, there is a resistance against the material. Therefore, the slide normally is pushed back before the cut takes place, and that pushing back is not the same in all the machines. Even though the machine is identical, it will be different. It depends on the clearances, it depends on the hardness of the material, it depends on the cutting tool, etc. So this pushing back is the spring effect which is happening in every machine. And that spring effect, if that can be determined, and that can be done also very easily by post measuring, and then within about 3 to 4 cycles, you can find out what the spring effect is and then correct it. And if that correction is done, and you have the data available through the glass scales or encoders or whatever, in terms of what movement the particular slide or the spindle did, and based on that, one could collect data and then get online data, so that the stratification becomes extremely easy. Well, that's a future vision which I spoke about. And that's something which one can talk about when you're talking about an IoT implementation. Therefore, when you talk about IoT, look at the purpose. What is the reason for IoT implementation? And when the purpose is clear, then IoT becomes successful. If the purpose is not clear, then IoT is really, what should I say, waste of money, waste of time. So that's something which is what I wanted to share today on stratification. Stratification is the essence to understand for a high-level IoT solution in your industry with intelligence, with intuitive actuation. That is the ultimate, where you have a totally robo-driven factory, for example. So with that, I come to the end of today's topic on stratification, which is simple. It's just to ensure where is the defect coming from, what is the source of the defect. And if you know what the source of the defect is, then you can control the defect. As simple as that. With that, let me now briefly talk about what am I going to be speaking on Monday. Let me see, what is it on Monday? Oh, Monday, it's about sales funnel. A totally different topic. So much important for all the companies. We'll talk about sales funnel. And with that, I wish all the ones in India, everybody who's watching in India, a very nice evening. And for those of you who are watching from abroad, have a great day ahead. And before I leave, let me just present to you the Sunday's Do House session, which I'll be conducting, which is on screen. You can see this. you can go on to that particular link, duhow.dinakarmurthy.com/31jan2021/ and then you can get the registration link. Please register and participate in a duo session on leadership and management. That's a very, very highly interactive methodology which I have developed, and you can experience that. So with that, I come to the end of today's presentation. And before I close, I want to just thank Sucharit for having complimented that it was an excellent discussion we had. And Samuthana, I don't know who it is. He says, you do good work, bro. Our name is the same. What is this? I don't know who it is. You do good work, bro. Our name is the same. Bye, bro. I don't know who it is. Anyway, so they are into some gaming is what I see here. Samutana Gaming. And then Sucharit says it is excellent. So thanks a lot, Sucharit. Thanks a lot, Samutana. And see you all next week on Monday. And before I leave, wish you all a very nice weekend. Enjoy the weekend and have a nice time with your loved ones. Thank you so much. Goodbye.